What is the government doing to intensify the war on illegal initiation schools around the country? Is the circumcision ritual still relevant in modern day society? And would traditional leaders be able to run traditional courts? What is the cost of maintaining traditional leaders? What time is it? It's question time. Hello and welcome to the show. My name is Mpotsedu. Traditional affairs are a sensitive area in South Africa. This because the country is diverse in its traditions and culture. There are no less than 6 legitimate kings in the land who have subjects that follow different traditions. They also do not come cheap. Among them is a thorny and controversial, yet popular tradition of initiation schools. My guest is Deputy Minister of Traditional Affairs, Dr. Obed Babela. DM, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Perhaps let's start with this issue of traditional or rather initiation schools and get over and done with it. There's a whole lot of controversy around it. What is government's position in as far as this is concerned?
Well, indeed, there is controversy because of the deaths that has occurred and also the amputations that unfortunately are on the increase because the traditional surgeons who were skilled are no longer in abundance and there's a very few of them. And then obviously those who are running these initiation schools, they are running illegal schools to start with. And then they are also let other children do the surgical aspects of the circumcision, and then that is why there's a lot of fault and a lot of death and a lot of amputations, and indeed that's a problem. And government, therefore, it's finalizing its policy that will go to the cabinet before the end of the financial year, which ends March next year, and then so that we could then begin out of that policy to develop a legislation that will then begin to prevent and illegalize illegal schools, so that anyone who runs a school will then face a prison sentence. Because currently, if you run a school, for so long as there's no death, we can't arrest you. We just close the school, ban it, and then that's it. And these people walk free because there's no law that says they've done anything wrong.
And why are people saying, what are they telling you? Why do they still want to do this? Why do they not prefer bara, for instance?
Well, it goes, initiation school is the big issue. 90% of what the boys goes to when they go to initiation schools is about teachings, education, about their culture, and about rituals, about customs. And circumcision is just a 10% of the issue, where the surgical operation will then take place.
But is it still happening? I mean, I've heard those stories where they say you go there to learn manhood and all that.
Yes, you go and learn it, and they prepare you from being a boy to be a man. And I think it's a very good teaching because society needs social cohesion. And the contribution by preparing these young boys to be men and be responsible men is a very good thing that we need to encourage as society. Because the family base is now collapsing. The fathers are no more there. Women are running families alone. There's no father figure. And therefore, obviously, the boys then will have them to be taken to society, a community. Then that prepares them thorough in the absence of fathers. And then, but it's a contributory element towards a building of a nation.
But at what age should you then start teaching these boys?
Well, my argument is that we need to start at, like the Children's Act says, 16 as a minimum. 18 definitely as an age ripe for young people to go in. And in the Eastern Cape, they are unapologetic. You must be 17 and above, few months before 18 or 18 years. And I know in Limpopo, they start at 13 years, and we've been saying to the traditional leaders in Limpopo, you can't tell me that a 13-year boy, after a few or 2 months going into initiation school, is a man.
Now, but you would agree that not everybody is adhering to this. I mean, these boys are dropping out of school.
Well, not really dropping out of school. Once is the season, obviously, they will even sacrifice their exams. And that's why we are engaging with the Department of Education and the initiation practitioners to say, let's look at the calendar of the school holidays.
Yeah.
In June, it must be immediately after they finish writing exams, even before the schools closes, so long as they finish writing exams and they can go in, because they need them for 2 months. But also make sure that they are back when schools resumes after the holiday. And I know that in Mpumalanga, we found cases early this year in June,
yes,
when by August the children were still in the initiation schools.
Yes.
And we need to realign those. And the law therefore has to come in and realign and bring order into that particular area. The age being one, the period and the law that does not affect the schooling of the children. And then also, what is it that the curriculum, what is it that they are teaching them? Because there were incidences in the Eastern Cape where boys who goes to illegal schools, they get taught wrong things. They come and rape old women, they rape young women. And when we're asking them, why are you doing this? They said, no, that's what we are taught.
Yeah, but you
in
see,
the wrong schools, you see. In
because-
the wrong schools, not in the correct schools.
But how do you know that this is wrong? I mean, there's no curriculum.
That's why we say curriculum development, it will be an issue in the law to then begin to say, according to the traditions of each, because we can't have a national curriculum
Can they
for everybody.
do this without the 10% that you referred to?
Well, we are trying to say male medical circumcision, which is the modern technology
Yes.
of circumcision. It needs to be looked at. It does not assimilate culture. It does not remove you from doing your cultural issues. It's just the modern way of doing the surgical operation. And I think we say it will save a lot of deaths, and it will also save a lot of these botched operations, and it will also save young people from losing their manhood. And in that, we will bring order so that when parents send children to initiation schools, they are sure that their children will come back alive.
Are you going to also set a fee as to, this is how much you should pay? Because right now, anybody can just charge whatever they want to.
Indeed, a lot of people are doing this, particularly the illegal operators. They do it for money. It's commercialization of the good practice. And we'll then have to determine, one, you must have the permit to operate. It must be granted by a traditional leader, by permission of the president, because this is a custodian of the traditional leaders. We can no longer just leave it anyone coming up in their own traditional space and then just do things. And then based on that, we also have to have a medication where the health department will come in and check whether you are trained, you are knowledgeable, we've got the skills necessary to can do it, whether traditionally or medical, and want the two to go coexist. Where you can't do it, you use the modern technology. Where you still have the skills, continue with the skills. So long as there's no death, there's no amputation.
Hold that thought there. We're going to take a quick break. This is Question Time. Please don't go away.
Our new waterproof smartphone takes superior photos even in low light. Has PlayStation 4 remote play and up to 2 days battery life. Don't settle for good, demand great. The new Sony Xperia Z3 series.
I would say there's no supplements or minerals, something that you can take will completely prevent cancer.
Although vitamins help the body produce and use energy, they do not provide energy themselves because they don't contain calories. Supplements also cannot be used to replace foods or make up for poor dietary habits.
Cases in Liberia are currently doubling every 15 to 20 days, and those in Sierra Leone and Guinea are doubling every 30 to 40 days.
Hi, I'm Dr. Silo Matau. Watch Health Talk every Saturday on SABC News.
Welcome back. You're still watching Question Time. My guest today is the Deputy Minister at the Department of Traditional Affairs, Dr. Obed Babela. Now, DM, let's now talk about the bill that was returned, which talks about traditional courts. Why was it turned back?
Well, there were protests and by women organizations in particular who were feeling that it's discriminatory on women. And then we are now living in democracy, which has balanced gender representativity. So we need then also then to begin to ensure that women's rights in the traditional courts are accorded status now.
Okay.
Because certain traditions obviously bars women from even coming in to represent themselves, and therefore they felt as discrimination. Okay. And therefore we have then indeed, ensure that we harmonize traditional practices with democracy so that the two can coexist balanced without assimilation of traditional practices, because the United Nations has expressed that there are indigenous societies throughout the world,
yes,
and do not at any given time assimilate their culture.
Okay.
And therefore one culture to stay, but it is not static also culture, and it's evolving, so it needs to move with modern times within those communities.
How were these courts, or how are they supposed to work?
Well, currently the courts, it's the custodian of the traditional leader. Then he will then appoint men, as was the case, to then be the one that adjudicate in dealing with cases that are not criminal in nature. There are disputes within the traditional community. So the issue of representativity by women comes in there to say, in the appointment, there are capable women who could also sit in the adjudication, depending on the nature of each case, because there will be certain cases where men will feel that I need a man-to-man. We allow that choice.
Okay.
But then don't discriminate in the law. And then the practice, obviously, it depends on who wants to and which other community will
What
not
kind
do
of
so.
cases are this where, they would have to go to a traditional
Stock
court?
theft is one of them, definitely. If the traditional leaders can really bring order so that people don't steal from each other. Family disputes arises also if those issues can then be dealt with. Feuds in the community also do happen, and then those are the issues. It's only where there's criminality and it is a matter that needs the other courts, then those issues then go. It's like small claims court,
Okay.
Where in the urban areas we have small claim courts. Let's have traditional courts in the traditional communities, because that has been the culture and then a way of life of Africans. So let's not destroy it too.
I guess then it takes me to the point where I have to ask you, how then do traditional leaders cooperate with local government?
Well, the Municipal Structures Act has a section in it which then determines how the relationships should be. But also a white paper on local government has dedicated a 5-page section that then begins to describe the type of relations that needs to exist.
Okay.
How they should be. The traditional leaders are not elected representatives, and they are there forever. And representatives will come for every 5 years or every time they get redeployed by the party that sends them in. So the council, therefore, where it exists and there's traditional leadership, then the traditional leadership should be represented in the council in a form of participation and then a voice and then to speak and to participate. But they can't vote, as is the case now. But they should be listened to, and their views needs to be carried through. The issues of land, and the council might need a piece of land that is a traditional community land, and then therefore, if they want that development, they must go and consult with the traditional leader and reach an agreement with the traditional council, because the traditional leader exists with a structure called the traditional council. The traditional council is 60% representatives chosen by the chief, and then 40% of representatives chosen by the communities. The IEC runs those elections.
Okay.
And also they serve for a term as a traditional council, like the council, but the chief is forever there.
Yes.
And then therefore then the two then have representative in the status of the council. And unfortunately, the relationships in certain areas is not good.
Yes.
Where the chiefs are now saying that we appear there, they only take photo sessions with us. Or when we speak, they never listen to us. They bully us also on our land, and they'll just develop land. So those are the areas that in the back to basics that the minister launched, presidential local government summit, we said the harmonization of the municipality and traditional leaders ought to be strengthened. So meaning, therefore, that the Municipal Structures Act must be reinforced to ensure, therefore, that we prescribe the nature of the relationships and how to settle disputes wherever they arise.
Traditional leaders gave up a lot of land. Are you in any way trying to fix that?
Well, indeed, in some instances, they did give a lot of land, but also we also are correcting other wrongs that are happening. Some of the regional leaders are selling land, and land cannot be sold because land doesn't grow. Whatever you have, and that's it. The more you sell it to private sector, it means you could no longer be in charge of those people because they will tell you, this is my private property, you've got nothing to say.
Correct.
So traditional leaders were asking you, just lease land for any development. Do like the Queen of England. England, Scotland, Ireland, and Lona are owned, and Wales are owned by the Queen of England. That is why it's the richest queen on land today. 700 million, trillions worth of assets are owned by her alone because of land. Because what they've done, the whole of Britain is owned by the Queen. Every development you see is on the Queen's land. So now whatever land you've got through land claims, don't sell it. But then in this, development must happen, and then let be a corporation but lease, so that we are beneficiaries of that development in whatever nature, and if it's a developmental that accrues benefits, please do so.
The relationship between politicians and traditional leaders, like you have said, I mean, there are areas where they are not so cordial. Just talk to us about that.
Well, indeed they are, because I think we are living in a modern democracy where within society there are those who believe that the traditional leadership is an old system that must die.
Yes.
And there's that belief. And then also there's a strong belief that says not, but traditional leaders were suppressed, dominated and conquered by colonialism and an apartheid and the Bantu state, them distorted and destroyed. Now the democracy must then restore that. Because the national question in South Africa is not yet resolved.
Yes.
The liberation of the Africans in particular, who were the most brutally oppressed. So therefore, give it an expression, but then guide it to transform in order so that it can coexist with democracy. And I think that's what we are now coming in to say. The two sides must then cooperate around that. So the relationship issue arises because of misinterpretation, their own different understanding, but also there's this issue of just undermining each other. Okay. So once there's a case in Limpopo where a traditional leader is now refusing a national route to pass through the land, and that route is so critical for development of the villages around. But because the relationships were sour, and is that say, I'll show you, and the others ones will say, we'll show you. So Sandrel can't continue because now they are calling us to come and mediate, and we have to go in there and mediate because of these egos that are there.
Hold that thought there, we're going to take a quick break. Please don't go away.
A huge part of this African growth is technological innovation. Governments here are working hard to ensure that the continent's technology matches that of more advanced countries.
High-speed internet connectivity is regarded as a utility.
As the continent battles diseases like Ebola, social media becomes the preferred method to share information.
People on social media are some of the society's most influential.
To find out more, join me, Spumelele Zondi, on Network every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. only on SABC News.
Robert Papela is my guest today. He's the Deputy Minister at the Department of Traditional Affairs. Now, DM, let's talk about the cost of maintaining traditional leaders. Costs government 59 million rands which they have to pay to King Goodwill Zwelithini and his royal household, which includes 27 children. And then the king came and asked for an additional 18 million to build a palace for his youngest wife. Then the king's official salaries are at a little, just almost, 1 million rand?
Towards 1 million.
Yeah.
1 million for kings and 800,000 for traditional
For
leaders.
chiefs. Okay. Now, there's quite a lot of money. But why the disparity between King Zwelithini and the other kings?
Look, we inherited the King Zwelithini's issue because the KwaZulu government at the time had built over a period of 41 years the status of the king to what it is. And when democracy came in, you take liabilities and the assets together, and that's it. So we could not therefore undo it. And then now with the other kings who were not recognized at a particular point in time, having been recognized, we are now developing a national norm and standard that says not below this, and incrementally we might then have to then begin to adjust and then ensure therefore that all kingdoms in South Africa are settled. But obviously we cannot reach where the other one, which is 41 years old, in the evolution and development is. But then definitely we need to bring a bit of fairness in the environment, but it will be an incremental fairness that will not catch up at some point and so forth. And we then have to look across what support, other support we need to look at besides the benefits, their policies, and then other necessities that are needed within the kingdoms. But we'll want to treat all kings equal and fairly. But obviously what we have inherited sometimes is not easy to undo. But then we just have to make sure therefore that we don't fast track enough that side, but subtract those that are lower, so that at some point, there can be equilibrium of the environment in a particular way. So
these kings may all have the budget of 60 million rand sometime?
Well, it's unaffordable, and I would not predict what it's going to cost in the future. But we are also looking at other models elsewhere in the world. And in Ghana, we went the Ashanti Kingdom.
Yes.
They don't even get a cent from the government because they are
well-to-do.
They are wealthy already with gold.
Yes.
And then there's much of traditional communities that are now discovering platinum. In the Vembe district, Venda, a lot of platinum belt is coming up there.
Yes.
In the other part of Limpopo, Lipalele, Kamatlala, Beggars Fort and Steelport, another belt is coming. In the Rustenburg area, you know about the belt.
Yes.
And already 4 kingdoms are wealthy. They have more money than the local government in those particular areas.
Yes.
So therefore, we'll then begin to look at the national model that then says how kingdoms can benefit from whatever is in the traditional land being exploited and explored, and then bring a settlement of that can then begin to look at all of them, so that the sending communities, those that send labor who do not have wealth, what is their benefit, and those that the wealth is discovered on them. And we will have to investigate that issue, and we are trying to really understand it for now.
Okay.
We are meeting the chiefs that are already in it and those who are about to go into it, but also with a lot of mishap that has happened where private sector has also went in and milked some of the kings because of lack of knowledge.
You then have these other kings or kingdoms, which you say that once they die, the current incumbent dies. That's the end of the kingdom.
Yes.
Why? I mean, can't they have another king? Why should the death of the king mean the death of the kingdom?
Well, you remember about that distorted kingdoms. When you were part of the progressive forces that were part of the liberation movements, they were disposed, some of them,
yes,
and then another family member brought in. So we are correcting the wrongs of the past. But in correcting, we don't want to disadvantage the person who is still alive. Okay. And that is why we say, be a king, whilst they recognize us is this one. So in some instances, there will be 2 kings. But when one dies, that family will no longer assume kingdomship. They will then become senior traditional chief.
Okay.
And then therefore, then the king becomes one. So we are settling the system too, as part of the correction of the wrong past.
Now, this wouldn't be a complete show if I don't ask about King Buelekaya Dalindyebo. Is there a ploy and in fact a plot by your government to get rid of the king?
Not at all. The king was part of the liberation forces together with their father.
Yes.
And I have recognized their contribution in the struggle. They suffered under apartheid.
Yes.
And we cannot make them suffer now. The royal family
Yes.
are the determination of certain decisions in terms of the law.
Okay.
So when a king does wrong things in any given society, the royal family has to come in and correct those things.
Yes.
And if the royal family so decides at a given time to say, we no longer want this man, we want somebody to then replace him, we'll also have to listen to the views of the royal family because they determine the houses, they determine, and because kingdoms, we only appoint after the royal family has said, this is the rightful person from the right house. But if the king does wrong things in society, they also can be removed, but not by government, but the royal family first recommending. And based on the arguments raised, then the government might concur and then de-recognize them, and then until they give us a person who's the rightful person to take over. So kings get removed by royal families.
Okay, so in this instant, the letter that the president wrote was based on recommendations made by the royal family, you say?
Yes, it was the royal family that had met after a process of engaging and trying to resolve the issue on their own.
Okay.
But unfortunately, the royal family, the majority says the king must remove, but there's still a minority that says no.
Okay.
So now we have a situation where the royal family is not united unanimously on the matter. So that is why, once the president says, give me reasons why, because I've got an evidence that has been brought to my attention that you want to be removed. And it's a majority view, because democracy works with majority.
So
but then the president, without removing it, said, let me hear your views first.
Okay.
And he sent the minister twice, previous ministers.
Yes.
They didn't succeed. And that is why he even wrote a letter, he still didn't succeed.
So what is happening now?
Well, he's still the king. We still support him as the king until the family is able to resolve the issue, whilst the matter is pending in court. And I think I will not go into the merits of the matter because it's still pending in court also.
Okay.
And I hope, therefore, that at one point or the other, the family will find each other so that it can also help us to move on the matter.
Okay.
But on the other deeds that the king might have done as went to court, and obviously those belongs to the courts, and we'll just leave them to the courts.
Oh, okay. So it's got nothing to do with the fact that he's a DA member?
No, nothing to do at all. And I think kings knows that if you do wrong things, the royal family has the power to remove you if you do anything wrong in society or within them. Okay. So therefore, it's a mechanism of checks and balance that exists within the royal families.
Okay. And you're refusing to talk about the cases and the charges that he's facing?
Well, I cannot now because they are sub judice and I do not know what will be the outcome. I don't want to be a witness in court.
That's fine, Deputy Minister. That was all the time we had for this discussion. That was Question Time for today. Get in touch with us. Our Twitter handle at QuestionTime24 and our email address questiontime at sabc.co.za. And you can also follow me on Twitter at Mpotsebi. That's it from us. Goodbye.